We're here to talk about the Innovation Lab and the live stream that has sort of been born out of necessity in this time with the campus closure. I'm here today with Emma Chickman, a student at Edison High School, Thomas Corey, is that how you say your last name?
Yeah, you got it.
Perfect. And he's also a student. And then Mr. Greg Gardner, one of our teachers. And we're just going to kind of talk through and have them answer a few questions about the lab and what's been going on. So my first question for you is, how did the idea of this live stream to live stream the aquariums in the Innovation Lab come about? And what were you thinking about at the time?
The beginning of the whole entire when school was first shut down. We got an immediate group together to be like, okay, this is our emergency group that we're gonna work through this to take care of the lab. And so the first time we're in there, I took a picture of the lab, just like a picture of the coral system. I usually post updates like my Snapchat or Instagram, just as a personal note. And since it was a couple of days after school closed, someone commented on it, and they said, "Oh, I'm glad to see the lab's doing well. My brother and I got worried since we didn't know who was going to take care of it. I'm glad it's in good hands." And so I talked to Mr. Gardner about it, and he had the idea why don't we set up a live stream so that at any point in time, anyone could have access to viewing the lab.
That's great. So simple idea. And then, so now it's gone from one picture to now we've got a couple of different cameras, one in the white sea bass tank and one in the coral tank. And so can each of you walk us through the process from start to where we are now in terms of the technology and the construction? So let's start with the technology piece.
Sure. So right when we started actually getting the idea together of a live stream, we wanted to see what we could initially do with what we already had in the lab. So we found some stuff from the robotics area, and we had a couple of old cameras and a old computer that we found, and we put it together, and we had this extremely low quality image of rippling water over the coral system. But it was definitely a really good proof of concept just to be able to get something going at the time. And it really showed that it was actually possible to get something out there on the internet. So right after that, we got on a conference call, and we talked with Mr. Bennett, Mr. Gardner, Emma, and a couple of other people from the district. And we talked about what would be best in terms of trying to figure out how to actually get the live stream to have a better quality. And we came up with the idea of using domes that would go inside the water in order to remove that rippling effect. And we would have higher quality cameras. And we would also need internet over to the coral system. So we ran an Ethernet cable to get better internet. And Emma built a dome system where it would go into the water, and the camera would sit inside the dome, so you would get a really good view inside. Then we ran the cameras over to another computer that we got for the project, and we wired it all up, and it looks like it does now.
Emma, can you expand a little bit on the construction of the, I don't know what you want to call it, but however we were able to get that camera submerged?
Yeah, so our first thing that we realized when we got the domes and we glued them together to our 6-inch pipe, that when you push it in the water, there's a lot of force acting against it. So once you would push it into the water, it immediately want to shoot back up. So Mr. Gardner and I started just spitting out ideas, and we finally got to the point where we're like, we should build kind of like a rack that it can sit on, and it's stabilized using smaller pieces of pipe so that it's not flying everywhere, but it's still submerged in the water. So then that day or the day after we glued the pipes and knew that they were okay in water, we just built the rack in one day, and it took a little bit of playing around. It was a lot of measurements, and then we pretty much just made it the whole width of the tank, so it would set on the side so we could take it out and move it. And we did end up moving it a couple times to be like, oh, let's put it more in the center so you could get, I remember the big thing was that Mr. Gardner wanted to be able to see the clownfish in their anemone. So, and you can see that, which I think is really cool. But, and then after that couple days, and we finally got the camera settled, all the wiring was okay. The dome was stable. We put it sounds a little funny, but we put a piece of Tupperware over the pipe, so the glare from the lights wouldn't hit it. And we got like this like pretty awesome quality from this puny little camera, and now the fish are coming right up to it, and it looks really cool.
The Tupperware, I consider that innovation, you know?
Yeah, innovation that excites.
What have been some of the challenges of maintaining the innovation lab and caring for the plants and animals during the campus closure? And what have all of you done to stay safe and have some safety protocols in place?
Well, I mean, just because of the pandemic that's going on, we are practicing all the things that are recommended for us, such as social distancing whenever we can. But it's also been a real challenge to try to keep all the stuff maintained in the lab, just because normally on any given day during the school year, you have multiple different classes going into the lab and maintaining the lab. And as of now, there's only a small group of about 5 people that are going in every day. And what that is, that's a lot fewer sets of eyes. And it's really easy to spot stuff when you're in a big group and you have 30 different people looking at something. But if it's only the 5 of you, it's sometimes a lot harder to spot problems.
Thomas really hit it really well in terms of when we're in the lab, we're really hitting upon physical distancing from each other. At some points, we know that we have to maybe use a mask, but we're keeping our distances far enough away from each other that we're communicating not in a close proximity at all. But we really have, our tasks are really focused on, each one of us have certain things that we're doing in the lab. And someone may be in charge of the sea bass system and the coral. So they'll work on both. One will work on making sure both of those systems are taken care of. And then the other, then usually we have 2 to maybe 3 people in the lab during the entire time, with an adult inside to just ensure the safety of what's going on. And then we'll have the other person working on the other systems, our other aquaculture systems that we have inside the lab. So it's really, we're having to also go to the outdoor and check the greenhouse to make sure that the greenhouse is being checked, as well as the outdoor aquaponics system as well. And so ensuring that our fish are being fed, but we're having to plant, because we're harvesting onions or kale or tomatoes that we have currently out there right now. And we've got chives, we've got lemongrass, we still have to keep the systems going. So it's essential to keep these systems alive if we're going to continue to move this program forward. They're live organisms just like we are. And they have to be fed. They have to be, their water quality has to be taken care of. They're organisms that we can't allow suffer. And so the team in there is helping to ensure the success of the program itself. And it's also, Mrs. Wentworth's also coming in to help, along with Diane Drago, and Mr. Grace is also in to check on other systems too.
Let's shift gears a little bit. And my next question is, what are some of the reasons it's important for students to be able to access the coral tank and the white sea bass tank remotely?
The Innovation Lab has evolved just from like a fish lab to becoming an integral part of a lot of teachers' curriculum. One of my AP biology teacher, I was emailing back and forth with her, and the first thing she said was thank you for the live stream link. I'm using it in my freshman biology class. And like, she was super pumped about it. And like, that made me feel good, because I know that it's getting put to a use that it was meant to be put to. And usually classes would come and walk through the Innovation Lab and do things where they have to observe and observe the organisms and calculate and analyze data with them. But now they can do that over online.
Continuing kind of down that path, what are some ways that providing this access might enhance learning?
Well, that's the exciting part, that being able to go online and actually seeing what the actual fish are doing in their type of man-made habitat that we've created for them, it gives a sense of what the fish behavior is like. It may give a sense of being aesthetically pleasing to them, but at the same time too, they're learning how these fish are interacting with each other in that environment, and how they're within the coral system is how the corals are interacting with the fish, and how all those organisms are interacting, especially within our coral system. Within the white sea bass, you're looking at large schools of those fish in that tank environment. How are they adapting to that environment, and how are they um, showing their different um, physiological changes that they're undergoing as their body mass is increasing? How is that changing their environment, and how are they having to move or swim or divert themselves around? And it's exciting to see the changes that are taking place within both tank environments.
You and I have talked about what this might look like with teaching students in a class setting or virtual class setting through a Google Meet or something like that. What are you planning for your first lesson with this?
Well, I'm going to use my first lesson with my agriculture of aquaponics kids. So, Thomas, get ready. But I'm planning to look at what is the behavior types that are going on within the tank itself, with especially the white sea bass. What different types of colorizations are changing in the light of the fish as it moves through? What different types of structures are they using on their body to propel themselves through the water? And what is the physics behind that movement? Obviously there's forces that are causing or friction that's causing them, because you have to propel yourself through the water. Well, there's friction moving against the water. So it's all those different things that are happening within that environment. And I'll probably look at where do you often find white sea bass along our coastal areas? And so if they can see it, they can actually transmit it in. I'm going to make it into a kind of a unique interactive lesson for them in the classroom. And so that the classroom being at home now, where they're going to be able to answer questions and be able to look at it from that perspective. So it's going to be exciting to see the types of responses I get, and more importantly, how it can be used further for other educational opportunities. Maybe even some of the elementary schools in our area might be able to get excited about this. What I think is kind of really cool is that as a group, we're innovators, we're collaborating. That's thinking outside the box. And I can't thank enough for Thomas and Emma going along with the crazy ideas that I sometimes have, and I do, and I'm certifiably, don't put this in, but
we're going to put this in.
Yeah, that's great. It's those crazy ideas that we can make happen, and it's making those things and moving it forward that can benefit more people in the long run is going to be awesome. And so I can't thank you two enough for kind of being trailblazers with me and stepping out of the comfort zone and actually saying, why not? Let's give this a shot and let's do it. And, that's where you two are going to excel in any type of college environment. You look at a situation or a problem and you say, how can I go ahead and go about solving it?
That's right.
Look at a problem and how can I create a new way to make it work better? And that is it's awesome. And as a teacher, I am so proud of you two for basically stepping out of your bounds to do something kind of cool and exciting. Now you're probably thinking, this is nothing. Well, it's actually something huge, you know what I mean? And it's cool.
There was a super loud boom while you were talking, Mr. Gardner.
Where, behind me?
No, here in my home. Yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up, because when you were asking, like, hey, what other instances do we have like this happening? And you were talking about, working through problem solving, critical thinking, and so yeah, when I'll tell you, Thomas and Emma, every time something was updated in the lab regarding the cameras, I was getting messages from Mr. Gardner saying, "Hey, have you checked out the stream? Check it out." And then I would, and the one day I did, it must have looked so perfect when you were there, Mr. Gardner. And then by the time I looked at it, some of those air bubbles had settled on the dome, and it looked kind of cloudy. And I didn't know how to break it to you, Mr. Gardner.
That the picture sucked. It's okay.
And it's funny how we actually we're like, how do we fix this? Other than I would literally stick my hand on the dome and like rub it to like get the bubbles away. Right. And then I remember just we were like trying to just think of ways, and it came up. Well, why don't we point a power head to it?
And it was brilliant.
I'm really proud of both of you for the way that you've been interacting with, you're sitting here hanging out with adults, and you have great ideas, and the way, not only the ideas, but the way that you're presenting yourself is really impressive, and you're able to collaborate with your teacher, with an administrator, with our net tech. It's great. And that's one of the key skills for any job. I don't care where it is. You have to be able to know how to talk to people and how to express your ideas. And sometimes your idea is different from someone else's. And to be able to say it in a way that's not off-putting and that actually gets people to think and then to continue to solve problems.
Yes. And that's key. And that's why it's so enjoyable to work with a team like the four of us here, and with Paul Tabney, and with Ryan Taylor, and with Doggo. It's because we're not setting up barriers. What we're doing is we're thinking of ways to have fun, but yet in this time of this pandemic that's going on, we're still making a difference in the lives of people and students. You're actually making a difference with our students and being able for them to see what's currently going on, and that's the cool part.